Okay, we're set.
There we go. Here we go. Yeah, hi everybody. Hi everybody. Mm. Oh my goodness, the five remembrances. Yeah, the five remembrances. We'll be spending so much time on those. And, in the way that we do with each thing, going in some depth. But this is the overview of them. You know, when I think of the overview of them, the first thing is, why in the world do I want to think about those every day? You know, seriously. I never wanted to think about them every day. I mean, I heard that the Buddha suggested that that was a good idea, but if that were the only thing he suggested, we would he would have been a blip on the screen. Nobody would have wanted to listen to anything else he had to say if that was his main teaching, right? Because all by themselves, if that was just the body of his teaching, that's just depressing stuff. That how can I not get upset about all that? There's nothing positive in any of it, really, in and of it, all by itself, right? But he didn't do it. It was in a context of a larger body of teaching, right, as well. And well, he was also aware that people are not focusing on these things. They're not seeing what? They're not seeing something fundamental about life itself. They're masking seeing something fundamental about life itself, and they're looking for happiness in all the wrong places because of that, right? And they're not seeing their true nature. They're not seeing their true nature underneath all of this. Yeah. And what is that true nature? What does that mean? It's really, that sense we come into the world, we all see that and we're all moved by that wide-eyed openness of in a newborn, and those first couple of months of just like this wide openness, and there's no self there yet. There's no separate self there yet, because separate self is not part of our deepest true nature. The self is something that gets gradually created and constructed out of very early interactions, you know? Initially with a parent, initially mostly with the main parent, with facial and etc. And gradually there's that sense of, oh, I still remember, it's my earliest memory, actually. I was in a crib, and I was really young. I was really young. Uh, it, and I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and there were these large creaking heating pipes. I don't know if you remember those from old houses. I mean, they were really creaking in the wall. And I was lying there, and I was listening to the pipe, and there's this. It was like the first thought. It was like the first thought of. It wasn't even a thought. It was like, oh yeah, the sound. It's that sound. The pipe. That's over there. And somehow there's something over here that's able to notice that that's over there, So it's like this the beginning, the very beginning of this sense, this internal sense of there's something over here that can perceive this world, which is here but not here. It's over there. It's over there. And from there we just keep building up and constructing this self. It goes on really intensely for those first few years, right? And all that comes with it, all the early dramas, but all those interactions and that construction of the self, we start to believe, oh, I guess I am here. I guess there is, oh, I'm here. I'm over here. There's a me here. There's a me here. There's a me here. And we forget really early on that me isn't solid. That me is constructed in a network of radical impermanence and chaos underneath all that. It's a miracle of neurology that we can do that happens. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the world that we have, you know. But fundamentally, there's nothing solid here at all. And yet, So much of our life after the self is constructed is based on trying to make it more solid, more predictable, more safe, more certain. I want to know where I am, how I fit in, how I'm doing. How other people see me? How do I see myself? How do I, how do I avoid pain? And how do I keep pleasure around? Keep pleasure around, keep pleasure around, keep pleasure around. How do I avoid pain? How do I do this? And all of the dramas that go along with that. And the Buddha said, yeah, it's all fantastic. It's all a miracle that we can do that. And there are a lot of joys that can come with that, and a lot of sorrows that come with that. But underneath that, there's a deep sense of insecurity that is our true, that is part of our true nature. There's a deep sense of insecurity because that's common humanity. It's not a personal insecurity. There's the personal insecurity as well. We all know that. But underneath that, the insecurity has a right to be there because there's nothing solid here. And there's nothing enduring here, and it ain't going to last, and nothing is going to last. And we don't want to see that. And we don't want to see that. We don't want to see that at all. Yeah? And so a lot of Carl Jung said, all this stuff, all our little patterns, all our little neuroses, all our little depressions and anxieties and filling up space, filling it up with 45 thoughts a minute, as Susan reminded us the other day, recently. All of that is keeps us from seeing even the deeper insecurity that is under there. We don't want to see that. We don't want to see that. And unfortunately, the teachings of the Buddha is we got to meditate and see what we're doing here. The teachings are we've got to look more carefully. We've got to look more consistently. We've got to see that there is nothing solid here. We've got to really begin to see that there is impermanence and there's nothing we can do about that, except begin to make a relationship with the way things are and stop trying to make things other than what they are at a deep level and begin to come into some sense of harmony with this impermanent world and learn how to kiss the joy as it flies and learn how to turn some of this, what's going on into and put a positive spin on it. But we'd rather not do that either. Even in meditation, we don't really want to look into impermanence too much. Not too much. But that's where the practice is going to take us because it is all impermanent, And we begin to see all of our strategies to not want to want to kind of hold it together, to cobble ourselves together. And when we do not learn how to more deeply relax, deeply relax in this field of impermanence. Yeah, I realize that there is a sense of being held. It's just that there's nothing solid in this being held. Yeah, I love that Tibetan expression. You've heard me say it before, some of you. Looking for happiness outside, looking for happiness by trying to orchestrate out here, which we do all the time, constantly, is like waiting for sunshine in a cave facing north. Yeah, yeah. But that's our way. Once this self gets developed, it's out here scrambling. And so part of the teaching, of course, is to meditate, and to begin to look carefully at what's going on in here, what our schemes and our strategies are to try to cobble stuff together and hold things together and be secure, okay? and to see to a certain extent the poignancy and the futility of that. And there's so much grounds for compassion right there. The whole world is doing that. And we're all going to die. You know, I'm aware in 1900, my grandmother was born in 1900. There's not a single person who was born in 1900 or before that's alive right now. There are 8 billion people on the planet right now. There wasn't one of them here in 1900. Right? That's the way it is. That's the way it is. You know, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about that stuff all by itself. We have to realize that the five remembrances are based in a context of a practice that is going to help us become more harmonious and more at peace and more at rest. That Tibetan prayer that I share sometimes on retreats, may the mind for so long wearied and weakened by trying to make things other than what they are, today find comfort and ease. We haven't learned how to find comfort and ease in this world of radical impermanence, in this impermanence. You know, we haven't learned how to stop some of the neurotic, uh, the neurotic searching for security. You know, we haven't learned how to stop it. We haven't learned how to stop gripping and grabbing and pushing and pulling and orchestrating and just settle into a world that is constantly changing. And it can be beautiful in that constant changing, but that's an acquired taste. That's part of the acquired taste of these practices, is to learn how to be more at home, more deeply at home, more deeply at home within ourselves. And we don't get more deeply at home within ourselves by going out, 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 out. And by just getting the right combination of everything just right around us, because it's all, you could say, a beautiful, we want to create, sure, we want to create beautiful sandcastles, but that's what they are. Yeah, they're not going to last. And so part of it is to not lose touch with the fact, you know, we can do these beautiful dances, but we have to realize that at a certain point we're dancing on the Titanic. There, there, there's underneath all of that. There are things there are things in motion. There are things that are in motion, and nothing that seems to be stable is going to last that way as stable. That's what we need to make peace with. It's a very difficult thing to make peace with. But the reflections are part of that. Not to forget. Not to forget, because we want to forget. We want to forget impermanence. Of course we do. That's natural too. That's why the Buddha said, "Yeah, yeah, I get it. We get lost in our pleasure palaces." No, we don't say, "Well, no, we're not in pleasure palaces," but some of us are kind of in a certain button. Finally, what's going on in this country is showing us, yeah, guess what? What we thought was solid is not solid. Yeah. So that's partly why we're so much shaken. So much of the world isn't as shaken as we are because they haven't had a level of stability that we've had here. Yeah. What we say, it's not. There's nothing solid here. Yeah. Yeah. It's scary. It's scary. And part of it is gradually coming to terms with the way things are, with some of the deeper sense of the way things are, so that we can come to the deeper sense of contentment and peace, the deeper sense of contentment and peace that we really want. We do want that. We do want that. Yeah. And the reflections have their place in helping us remember. Oh, right. Oh, right. Well, I'll close with this Zen story. That's the Zen master went on a long retreat and came back, and his students gathered around, wanted to know what was his most important moment of his insight on the retreat. And he said, he paused for a long time, and he said, "Yeah, my insight is that we're all going to die, but no one seems to live as if that were true." And so the reflections on it can kind of orient us toward 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 practice, toward practice, toward more practice, you know. It's not the reflection all by itself, which could be kind of dark, but in the context of, all right, and this is why we're practicing. This is why we're practicing. So thank you, everybody.